Top 10 Weird Animal Phobias. Zoophobia is the overall fear of animals, but why are some people terrified by just one kind such as a fish, ichthyophobia, or even a worm, helminthophobia? While some feel safe if they stay away from the place this animal is found, others can't even watch them on TV. Having cynophobia, fear of dogs, and hearing a barking noise outside might make someone terrified to leave their house. 3.5% to 6.1% of the global population have arachnophobia or a fear of spiders, and for me it's the length of their legs and the speed they move that terrifies me. There are some more interesting reasons why people have these phobias that are discussed here, such as the parts toads used to play in witchcraft. 10. Ichthyophobia, fish. While someone might be afraid of a dog or cat because they were attacked, they're unlikely to be attacked by a fish, so why does ichthyophobia occur? Perhaps they were attacked by a shark when they were young, but the chances of this are pretty slim. Galeophobia is a fear of sharks. This is quite a common phobia and probably makes more sense to most people. One kind of fish is a flying fish, so maybe this was something that scared them as a child. As fishes are seen by some to be dirty, slimy creatures, one of the most common causes of this problem is the belief that fish spread diseases. It could seem dangerous to eat them or even travel to a water source where they might be swimming around. Although they might be fine to go down to the seaside or near a lake as long as they don't get in, for some people with the phobia, even going near these sources of water could be seen as life-threatening. 9. Cynophobia, dogs. A fear of dogs or cynophobia is not a totally irrational phobia, as many people have been chased or bitten by one at some time. Perhaps when they were a child, or if a sibling was attacked and the person witnessed this. Figures have shown that the number of dogs owned in the US in 2017 rose by over 20 million compared to a survey from 2000. It is likely for the person with the phobia to have at least one friend who owns a dog, and they might be afraid to go around to their house. They might even be afraid to leave the house, as there always seems to be someone out walking their dog. Even the sound of barking or whining could terrify them. A good way of curing this phobia could be to start off by exposing them to a puppy. Or, this could be a kitten, if someone has ailurophobia, or a fear of cats. 8. Ailurophobia, cats. This fear of cats is known by many other names such as gatophobia and felinophobia. Although people aren't seen out walking their cats, it could still be hard for anyone with the phobia to go around to a friend's houses if they have one. They'd probably have to ask them to keep it in another room. Sometimes, even a meow could terrify them. Cats can be quite vicious, and if a young child is scratched by one, this could lead to ailurophobia. There are some famous conquerors such as Napoleon Bonaparte, Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great who are believed to have suffered from this phobia. Although historian Catherine McDonough states no record exists of Napoleon either liking or hating cats, she states in her book Reigning Cats and Dogs, A History of Pets at Court Since the Renaissance, that there is an old cultural myth that cats have a magical ability to detect overweening of dictators. 7. Alligatorophobia, chickens. While ornithophobia is the fear of birds, alligatorophobia is a specific fear of chickens. This comes from the Greek word elector, meaning rooster. It's more likely if someone has lived in a rural location all their life and had a bad experience as a child. Perhaps they got stuck in an area where there was a large flock. Once they've grown up, if they still have this phobia, they might decide to live in an urban area where they don't have to worry about farms that might hold hundreds of them. Eating chicken might also disgust them, as well as other birds such as duck or turkey. It might not be such a good idea to invite them round for a Christmas dinner. An overall fear of birds could be more difficult to handle. Even in a city, some kind of bird is always likely to be lurking. 6. Buffonophobia, toads. Like fish, toads are a species that are found around water and are often seen as repulsive, disease-carrying creatures. Toads are more likely to be discovered in forested areas, so this might be a place that someone with buffonophobia avoids. There are some species that are poisonous, so the person might have heard about this. The giant toad, has the ability to kill humans and animals with the poison it emits. There is also an association between toads and witchcraft, and this could be something that the person with the phobia believes in. Sometimes toads were made part of a potion as a form of poison. There was even a belief that witches could be recognized by a small mark resembling a toad's foot. Today, these are quite unlikely reasons for someone to be terrified of toads, but there are still some people who continue to believe it. Buphonophobia is part of the phobia batrachophobia, which is a more widespread overall fear of amphibians. 5. Scelesophobia, worms. Worms are an animal species that keep our plants alive and are a critical part of the agricultural system. However, there are some people suffering from helminthophobia who won't even walk on the grass because they know the worms are squirming around in the ground underneath. Living underground, most people see them as a dirty species and not something they like to touch, but those suffering from the phobia could insist on always walking on nothing but concrete. Perhaps they found an infestation in their food in the past and they see worms as a threatening cause of contamination. It is even known for people to refuse to go outside without a bottle of bug poison to spray themselves and their surroundings with. They could even do this in the home, spraying their carpet just in case. 4. Chiroptophobia, bats. While someone with cynophobia might be afraid of going out during the day with people out walking their dogs, people with chiroptophobia are more likely to be afraid of going out at night time. In medieval Europe, if a bat entered the house, this was seen as a prediction of death in the family, and coming up to Halloween, no one can go out without seeing one of them stuck to a window or hung up in a shop. Although they're not dangerous to humans, they're still seen by many as extremely ugly with their black leathery wings. All living in Latin America, there are only 3 species of bat that actually feed on blood. It seems that most people get their fear of bats watching films like Dracula and Seen with Red Eyes, feeding on humans. 3. Melissophobia, bees. Anyone who's been stung before or just knows that they sting will naturally move out of the way or try to smack a bee if there's one flying around. To most people, this just seems annoying, but there are others who could have a panic attack if they even see 1 or 2 flying around. Sphexophobia is the fear of wasps, and it's interesting that people with melissophobia could be terrified of bees but not bothered by a wasp. There are some people suffering from insect sting allergies, and if they are stung then this could be life-threatening, explaining why they suffer from the phobia. Others might not have the allergies but hear about people dying as a result of being stung, developing melissophobia. Insect-related phobias are one of the most common types, and insectophobia is the fear of all of them. 2. Equinophobia, horses. Horses are unlikely to chase someone like a dog and can't sting someone like a bee, so why are people afraid of them? Horse riding is a popular hobby, and if someone's had a bad fall after being bucked off, this could lead to a fear. Perhaps they were kicked by a horse and broke a bone. Equinophobia is more likely to occur if this happened when the person was young. This could lead to a phobia of riding horses, or just by looking at one, they could remember being kicked and stay away completely. In some horror films, black stallions are shown as evil creatures with red beady eyes, so this could make someone afraid of horses if they've watched a film like this at a young age. 1. Ostroconophobia, shellfish. This is the overall fear of shellfish such as lobsters, crabs, squids and crayfish that are more likely to be found in the sea. People with this phobia might have a fear of the seaside but not be afraid to visit rivers. It could be more the fear of eating lobsters or prawns, and they might find it impossible to even eat in a restaurant if they're on the menu. The reason for this could be an allergy to eating shellfish or the memory of eating a meal that was gone off. Well-known American stock car racing driver Denny Hamlin suffered from ostroconophobia, but sometimes people just don't know why their phobia has occurred, and he stated, "I have a lobster phobia. I don't know why. I just don't like them. I cannot eat dinner if someone beside me is eating lobster. I can't look at it. So as far as I'm concerned, they need to put it back in the water and let it live."
10 American mobsters who were not Italian Americans. The relationship between Italian Americans and the Mafia is as solid as the relationship between Italian Americans and on account of a long history of movies, books and TV shows focused on crowd families like the Corleones and the Sopranos, just as a large group of genuine stories canvassed in films like The Untouchables, Goodfellas and, obviously, a definitive exemplary criminal flick Gotti featuring John Travolta. When we consider American-composed wrongdoing, we think Italian. However, that essentially isn't the entire story. Here's a elite of contract killers, buttonmen and bagmen who are assuredly not Italian. Number 10. Shonda Burns. Composed crime is a perilous game. In the event that the specialists get you, your propensities will backfire. In the event that your adversaries get you, your face will get brushed off. Not many mobsters live a long, peaceful life and bite the dust of mature age. Shonda Burns figured out how to endure the brilliant period of criminal history, the 20s and 30s, and prevailing in the similarly vicious 50s and 60s. He was killed during the wild 1970s, exploded alongside his extravagant Lincoln Continental by a bomb planted, purportedly, by the Hells Angels, reached by his previous master Danny Green. Burns was conceived in Czechoslovakia in 1907. 1 month after his introduction to the world, Burns' family emigrated to New York City. Incapable to get by, Burns' family moved to Cleveland, Ohio, where his mom set up an illicit liquor still in their loft during Prohibition. In 1920, the still exploded as Burns' mom was close to it and executed her, leaving youthful Shonda to initially need to live in a Jewish halfway house before inevitably being taken in by his grandma. From the 1930s until his hazardous demise in 1975, Shonda Burns rose through the positions in Cleveland's hidden world, turning into the town's most dreaded and outgoing mobster, continually researched, captured and delivered, increasing in notoriety for being a numbers ruler and as a middle person between fighting hoodlums. After his demise, Cleveland proceeded to endure a lot more bombings in the wake of Burns' death, getting named Bomb City, USA in the press, with 36 bombings in 1976 alone. Number 9. Mickey Featherstone. This was a wrecked man. One could make the contention that entering the Marine Center during the tempestuous Vietnam War at 17 years old basically fixed his destiny. The naive youngster, conceivable holding basic schizophrenia, occupied with brutal battle in the Green Damnation and White Warmth Cap was the contention in Vietnam. He was released on clinical grounds in 1967, professing to encounter mind flights. At the point when Mickey got back to the famously rough, Irish overwhelmed Hell's Kitchen zone of New York, his brutal propensities proceeded. That is the point at which the Westies, a heartless pack of Irish-American blackmailers, extortionists and agreement executioners, took in the savage youthful Featherstone and put him to work. Featherstone turned into an esteemed agreement executioner for the Westies, working under the immediate request of group pioneer Jimmy Coonan. Featherstone and Coonan were pursued for the homicide of a Hell's Kitchen barman in 1979, yet were vindicated, not for need of proof. One legal hero allied himself at preliminary and a key observer just so happened to end his own life. Right. Featherstone got frustrated with Coonan and the Westies after they manufactured a closer coalition with the Gambino wrongdoing family. Featherstone wasn't excessively excited about non-Irish mobsters and loathed the manner in which different gatherings utilized the Westies as celebrated task young men. He turned State's Observer in 1987, his declaration assisting with cutting down the Westies, seeing numerous individuals, including Coonan himself, sent to jail. He presently lives under an accepted name someplace in the USA. Number 8. Caspar Holstein. One of the most convincing characters in HBO's Forbidden's period dramatization Promenade Empire was Dr. Valentin Narcisse, a Marcus Garvey supporting mainstay of his locale that additionally enjoys some detestable hoodlum conduct, depicted by the astonishing Jeffrey Wright. This magnificent character was motivated by one of the most captivating men in 20th century African American history, Caspar Holstein. Holstein lived at huge. He claimed numerous extravagance vehicles, had 2 stylish lofts in New York's Harlem territory, a house on Long Island and a huge number of sections of land in the province of Virginia. The primary contrasts between most mid-20th century American money managers and Holstein: 1. He was dark. 2. He brought in his cash through unlawful betting. His numbers racket was extremely mainstream during the 1920s among the occupants of Harlem, and he was a mainstay of African American culture. He paid for youthful individuals of color to go to school, gave out food bundles to the destitute, and even financed residencies in Southern dark colleges. Similar to most wrongdoing figures of the age, Holstein gradually backed away from the criminal life, in the end resigning in 1937 after he was captured for his contribution in betting, going through only 1 year in prison. Number 7. Murray the Camel Humphreys. Murray's family emigrated to the U.S. from the little provincial town of Llandinam in Powys, Wales in the last part of the 1800s. Humphreys rapidly falling into the most loved distractions of mid-20th century kids in Chicago, clench-hand battling and thievery. He was taken under the wing by a reformist-appointed authority named Jack Murray, who attempted to get the clever youthful Humphreys to think about a daily existence inside the law calling. Humphreys didn't follow that way, however, unquestionably utilized numerous exercises in how the legal framework functioned, turning into a curve controller of law implementation and finder of political influence. The way he turned out to be important for Al Capone's Chicago outfit is really astounding, tantalizingly ailing in enough key information to deliver the story unbelievable instead of basically a reference in hoard history. Humphreys had fallen in with a little league hood named Fred Evans, who needed to develop his smuggling activity yet was puzzled by the size and simplicity with brutality showed by individuals from Capone's posse. Humphreys concluded that battling shoot with discharge was the best arrangement, commandeering a Capone truck at gunpoint. Individuals from the outfit recognized Humphreys as the shooter and carried him to Al Capone. Tragically, we don't have the foggiest idea about the idea of their gathering, yet we do realize that normally any individual hauled into a meeting with Capone wouldn't leave with his legs unblemished, and may even leave through the indirect access in a rug. Murray Humphreys some way or another figured out how to intrigue Capone enough to get himself selected into the association he had quite recently looted. Visually impaired. No one hustles like the hump, Capone said. Humphreys is likewise supposed to be the motivation for Tom Hagen, the Corleone family's consigliere played by Robert Duvall in the Guardian films. Number 6. Ken Eto. A rodent is a rodent in any language. In Japanese, the word is Nezumi. Yet that likewise signifies mouse in English. All things considered, whatever the right Japanese phrasing, Chicago-based mobster Ken Eto jabbered to the feds about the Chicago outfit. Having left his local California, after a spell, in the same way as other Japanese Americans, in an internment camp during the 40s, Eto moved to Chicago in 1949. He set up a numbers game and immediately began rounding up oodles of cash, $200,000 every week, with $3,000 discovering its way into the pockets of degenerate cops that permitted Eto to flourish. He was working under the gift of the Chicago outfit for quite a long time until, in 1983, the FBI revealed Eto's unlawful Bolito game. Apprehensive that Eto would turn state's observer, the Horde chose to take him out. Eto endured 3 discharges to the head because of the projectiles being hand-stacked with a lacking measure of black powder, a strategy intended to stop specialists following the shooters through the spent ammunition. The underpowered are just brushing Eto's skull instead of blowing his head. Ken Eto recuperated and continued to affirm, taking into consideration the state to get 15 mobsters in jail alongside a grip of degenerate cops. Eto entered the Observer Security Program, migrated to Georgia where he carried on a long, occasion-free life. He died in 2004. Number 5. Chelsius Boas. Chelsius Boas steered the Greek horde of Philadelphia through the tempestuous 70s, producing a nearby bind with Raymond Martorano, envisioned, a fighter for the city's long-standing wrongdoing family the Scarfos, and supervising advanced sharking, betting and methamphetamine tasks. Subsequent to declining to submit to Nicodemo Scarfo's organization to settle up a road assessment to the family so as to continue working, a move that would basically retain Philly's Greek crowd into the Scarfo wrongdoing realm, Boas was gunned down at the city's Mellitus Greek restaurant in 1981, where he was feasting with his associate Jeanette Curro, Raymond Martorano and radio personality Jerry Blavat. Alongside Boas, Curro was additionally slaughtered while Martorano and Blavat got away with minor wounds. Since his demise, and the killing of other conspicuous Greek mobsters during the 80s, the Greek crowd has attempted to recapture any traction in the American hidden world. Number 4. Vojislav Stanimirovic. Obscure doings. Goal-oriented heists and global political skullduggery are components secured by incredible writers like Vojislav Stanimirovic. They are likewise the activities of a grimy, abominable vocation criminal, like Vojislav Stanimirovic. This Serbian mobster turned journo was a curved shark, driven to some degree by the affection he held for his local Serbia, alongside his adoration for taking sparkling objects. Famous as far as concerns him in the 1971 theft at the Villa Vizcaya in Florida that saw an expected $1.5 million worth of workmanship and silver articles, including an extremely valuable silver bull once claimed by Napoleon Bonaparte. Stanimirovic took care of his obligations to society and proceeded to compose professionally. His strength? Wrongdoing, obviously. His child, Pavle, envisioned, followed in his dad's crook and editorial strides, going through 16 years in prison, more than 2 stretches, and now covering criminal stories for distributions, for example, The Washington Post and online work with The Daily Beast. Number 3. Jose Miguel Batlle. When Benicio del Toro has been cast to play a genuine figure, you realize that individual will undoubtedly be a boss. At the point when you consider that a similar person additionally battled for the U.S. moved renegades in the messed up Bay of Pigs intrusion, got detained for a long time by the Cubans before escaping back to the U.S. to manufacture a criminal domain. I mean, for what reason are we just getting a film now? During the 70s and 80s, he turned into the pioneer of the corporation, a rambling wrongdoing/business realm that comprised of Bolita games over the U.S. Eastern Seaboard, just as possessions in Peruvian club and a large group of interests in real organizations. After numerous years on the spat Peru, Batlle was arraigned back in the U.S. on racketeering charges, having amassed more than $1 billion from drug dealing, unlawful betting and credit sharking. He passed on while anticipating a jail move in 2007 at 77 years old. Number 2. Johnny Onionhead Eng. Johnny Eng, aka Onionhead or Automatic Rifle Johnny, was the pioneer of the Flying Dragons Road Pack during the 1980s, controlling heroin in the Chinatown region of New York. Eng's ruthless reign reached a conclusion in 1993 when he was condemned to 24 years in prison, having to make good $3.5 million in fines and surrendering his gigantic Pennsylvania bequest as further discipline. Some portion of the domain was supposedly utilized as a discharging range by individuals from the Flying Dragons, sharpening their precision with assault rifles. A year after his delivery in 2010, Eng's better half Laurie was killed by another Flying Dragon part, David Chia, who slaughtered himself, likely so as to stay away from Johnny Eng's reprisal. Number 1. Charlie Wall. This wasp, white, somewhat English-Saxon, Protestant, who turned into the dignitary of the hidden world in Tampa, Florida, didn't have the typical unpleasant childhood related with American mobsters. Divider was from an affluent family. His dad was a regarded doctor and his mom was the girl of the previous chairman of Tampa. He held influence over the city's illicit betting rackets for quite a long time, making millions and permitting him to increase political associations that hardened his position. He won a ruthless turf war with mobster Ignacio Antonori, who, in 1940, was gunned down while making the most of his morning espresso at an eatery. Divider couldn't win his subsequent crowd war. In 1955, Wall was slaughtered by getting beaten to a wicked mash with a home run stick and having his throat cut at his home. The hit was likely arranged by his most noteworthy adversary, well-known Florida hoodlum Santo Traficante Sr.